So I just released this really in-depth video about how to use nutrition to improve specific mental health issues, but I really thought that I had talked about some specific things about protein and I totally left them out. So in this short and quick video, I want to give you some of those extra benefits that can come from protein and how to use it in a way that can really benefit mental health issues. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So if you have yet to watch our video on how to use nutrition to improve mental health issues, I'll point you to that at the end of this video. You're really going to want to watch through that. It has a lot of information in there and it's going to help you understand these things a little bit more. It'll make these things make a little bit more sense, but I just kind of want to jump into some of these easy steps that a person can use with protein to improve some mental health issues. And we went over some studies in that longer video that talked about how increasing protein intake has the ability to improve mental health issues like depression, anxiety, and bipolar type issues. But I also talked a lot about if you've tried that and it didn't help you, there can be reasons for that. There's a lot of times there's these digestive malfunctions going on where a person can't really break down proteins correctly. And then when they eat these proteins or they try to increase protein, they feel really lousy or they feel worse. So there can be reasons why that might not work for some people. So in that video, we explained how to correct those digestive malfunctions so you can really get the benefits of that protein. We also talked about some of these studies where some of these digestive issues present in more significant mental health issues, and it can kind of be viewed in a way where a person almost seems like they're not really eating protein even if they are, since they can't break it down and get all of the value out of that protein. But in this video, I want to talk a little bit as if you're taking the steps to improve any digestive malfunctions. So if you're having any digestive symptoms at all, those need to be corrected because you're not really breaking down your food and getting all the nutrients out of that food. So you wouldn't be getting all of the value out of the protein. For some digestive malfunctions, protein can be the harder aspect to break down, and carbs and sugars and processed junk are a lot easier to break down. When someone isn't making enough stomach acid to break down protein, they can break down a toaster pastry, they can break down some chips because that's practically broken down in the package that it comes in. All these processed junk are a lot easier to break down and turn into fuel, and that's why a lot of people gravitate those. But we talked in the last video about how eating excessive amounts of carbohydrates can create a lot of trouble for these mental health issues, and how a lot of these mental health issues are just about the body's inability to give the brain and the body a sustained fuel source. And when either the brain or the body run out of fuel, then a lot of these symptoms can be magnified or showed up. So we talked a little bit about how this digestive capacity is very important to be able to benefit from those proteins, but we also want to understand how consuming proteins can slow down the effects of those carbs and sugars. Basically, if a person's just predominantly eating those carbohydrates and sugars, we talked about how that can create this spike in blood sugar that will result in this really hard crash. And when you have a really hard blood sugar crash, when the person is not set up to be able to access fat for fuel, or they're not using ketones or something like that with some ketogenic diet or something, then it's going to leave them with no fuel source and can really magnify all of these symptoms. But if a person can include protein with those carbs and sugars, now those carbs and sugars will hit the system a little less hard. They don't create as much of a spike, and therefore you're not going to create as much of a crash. So in one of the studies we talked about in the other video, there was a 15-year-old girl that was eating predominantly carbs and sugars, and when they put in more proteins and fats and fiber, those all have the ability to slow down the effects of these carbs and sugars. So if you're having mental issues, you really want to have protein with every meal. Even if you're having just a snack, you want to include some type of protein to slow down the effects of those carbs and sugars. And you really usually want to eat that protein first. You know, you want to start off with protein. Don't eat all of your carbs and sugars first and then end the meal with protein. You want that protein and the fiber and any fats going in to kind of slow down the effects of these carbohydrates and sugars. So remember, this protein is not going to remove the effects of the carbs and sugars, but if you can include enough protein, you're likely also going to reduce the amount of carbs and sugars that you're consuming. Plus, you'll reduce the effects, since those proteins and fiber can really slow down the effects of those sugars. So if a client is having any type of mental health type issues, I really don't like to see them consume any type of totally carbohydrate or sugar type meal. Even if it's a snack, I want them to have some type of protein in there. And the only situation is there's this trick that I like some of these clients to use, where if there's a part of the day where they just feel like they're bonking, or maybe I just don't feel as much clarity, I'm starting to feel a little bit more depressed or fatigued, or I just feel like I'm going down the hill because my blood sugar's going down. You can take one of those Cutie Orange things, the ones you just kind of peel, or a tangerine or something, and just eat 2 of the little wedges, not 2 Cutie Oranges or a whole Cutie Orange. Sometimes that can be too much sugar that can create a spike and crash when you're eating it by itself. But if you just take 2 of the little wedges, this fructose in the fruit can often process a little bit different than other types of sugars, and it might give the person a little bit of fuel without creating a big spike or crash. If you hate oranges, I've also had clients use like just 3 blueberries at a time. But this is a great way just to give the body a little bit of fuel without having to have a whole snack or a whole meal, and not something that's going to create a big spike and crash like a candy bar or a bag of chips would. And the person might use these like 2 slices of Cutie Oranges 4, 5, 6 times throughout the day. As long as they're not having a whole orange at one time and it's spaced out, for some people it can help them get through a tough spot until they can do the steps that we talk about in that longer video about fixing digestion, improving mineral levels, and a lot of these other possible underlying causes that have the ability to magnify or create these mental health issues. Now, the type of protein that you consume can also really matter. If someone's going to say, oh, I'm just going to have a handful of nuts and that's going to be my protein, oh, I'm just going to have these seeds, I'm just going to have this soy-based Frankenburger thing, those things do not work as well as animal protein. Animal protein is going to act more like a slow burning log on the fire and give the person, the body, and their brain fuel for a longer period of time than something like a handful of nuts or a Frankenburger. So if you can consume more animal protein when you're including proteins, that doesn't mean you can't have nuts or something like that. Just try not to count that as your protein source. Now, some nuts are certainly going to be better than not having any protein at all. I just see much better results, especially when a person is first trying this and they haven't fixed any of the underlying causes that are really creating the mental health issues. They just do better when they're using animal protein. So if you're a vegan, then this can be a little bit harder to succeed at. Now, if you're a vegan because you think it's the healthiest option, then you might want to learn a little bit more about that. I talk a lot about some of the mistakes that can go on with that situation in my book, Kick Your Fat in the Nuts. And I'll put the link in the description below this video where you can get that whole book totally for free, and that'll help you walk through that. Now, if you're a vegan because of, religious or spiritual beliefs, then you might need to just keep doing that and do what you can to kind of work with your body a little bit better and maybe correct some malfunctions or imbalances that are going on. But it's a lot easier when you can include these animal proteins and they seem to be more effective. Remember, what we're trying to do is keep this blood sugar on a more even keel so the body and the brain have a consistent fuel source. So not only reducing the carbs are going to reduce these spikes and crashes, but if you can include enough protein with each meal where you're having these carbohydrates, it can reduce the spikes and help you keep more on that even keel type situation. So I hope that helps you understand some of the benefits that can come to mental health issues using protein and some of the ways you can use that to get the most bang for your buck. Now again, some of the things that we just kind of ran over real quick are not going to make as much sense if you haven't seen the full video that explains a lot of these underlying causes for these mental health issues and how to improve those problems. So jump over right now and check out that video on how to use nutrition to improve mental health. I can't wait to hear about your results.